What does this pile of pallet wood have to do with this beer growler? Stay tuned and I'll show you how the two are connected. My friend and co-worker Kim down in Atlanta enjoys a taste of a craft beer from time to time, and she asked me to make her some way to carry a couple of these 64-ounce growlers home from the local craft brewery. They got to have a handle on them, but they get a little unwieldy at times, and you don't want them rolling around in the back of your car or whatever. So I come up with this little beer growler tote. It'll hold two 64-ounce beer growlers, and it makes a nice convenient way to carry your purchase home from the local craft brewery. So it was a lot of fun to make. There's a minimum number of parts. Like I said, it's mostly pallet wood. The only thing I did buy was some dowels. I got a dowel for the handle and some an 1/8-inch dowels for the pegs that I used. But pretty much everything else came from the pallets that I showed earlier. So stand by and I'll show you how I made this beer growler tote. Well, here's most of the parts for our growler. I needed to do a glue up for the end pieces. They needed to be 5 1/4 inches wide, and I didn't have any pieces that wide, so I glued two parts of the pallet together. All the pieces have been face jointed and one edge trued on the joiner, but the other sides are still pretty rough. You can see that one is, and this one needs to be cleaned up. So what we're going to do is take all these pieces and run them through the drum sander. The end pieces need to be 3/4 inch thick, 5 1/4 inches wide, and 15 inches long. This is the two bottom pieces. They're going to be 2 1/4 or so inches wide, and they'll be cut to fit inside the the length will be like 11 inches. These are some of the slats. I got a couple of different ones here. Obviously, a couple of pieces came out as oak. I don't think I'll use those. They don't really fit in with the rest of them. So that's 2 slats, and then I have some other slats over here I'm going to use to put on the side. They're going to be an inch and a half wide. Everything except the ends is going to be a 1/2 inch thick. So I got to sand this down to 1/2 inch. I got a 1 inch dowel that I'm going to use for a handle, and I got an 1/8 inch dowel that I'm going to use to peg the side and stuff together. So I'm going to use that. And this piece is going to be used for the divider. This was from a previous project, so it's also a piece of pallet wood, but I'm not going to cut that until I get the piece actually put together. Then I'll cut it to fit. So these are the parts. So next thing we're going to do is go to the drum sander and sand these down to the thickness that we could need. We could also use a planer, but planer's tucked away in the corner someplace, and there's not that many pieces here, so I'm just going to go ahead and sand them down. Well, I had 80 grit sandpaper in the drum sander, so it left quite a few marks and ridges in the pieces. So I'm just cleaning them up here with some 120, and then the final sanding will be with some 180. I'm cutting the parts to width and length here. I make a couple of cuts on the width-wise to get it down to the exact width that I want. And on the right, I use my miter gauge with the stop there to get a consistent part size. Well, I'm putting the bottom slats on with pocket screws. I use the Craig micro jig to cut these pocket screws. The bottom slats are only 1/2 inch thick, and the micro jig is really suited for cutting pocket holes into thinner stock. So that's what I used. It worked out pretty well. I attached them with some 1 inch panhead screws. It's time to put the slats on the side of our little growler carrier here. So I've got them cut to length. They're 12 1/2 inches. I got 3 on each side. The first one is 1.5 inches, and then I got one that's at 2 inches, and then I got another one at 1.5 inches. So we're going to put those in there like that. So the first one that we're going to put on is going to put a little bit of glue on it. We don't need a lot. I'm going to actually pin these with some dowels, so we don't need a lot of glue, just enough to hold it. And we need a little bit along the bottom edge, not a lot. I don't want to deal with a lot of squeeze out, so we're just going to put a little bit of glue on there. Hold this down. All right. And the bottom one sits flush with the bottom of the carrier and flush with the sides. So we got that on there. I'm going to use a couple of micro pins just to hold it on there while the glue tries to dry. And then I got some 1/8" dowels that I'll put in there to hold it permanently. We'll put that one there. And that would look good. That there. And I don't think we need to put any in the center there. So the next one is I'm going to put the top one on. I got a mark here at 6 inches, so 6 inches from the bottom up to the top of this slat. So it's right about there. So I'm just going to put a little glue on this one, just on the ends. And line it up with my mark. Make sure it's square to the case. It is, and we're going to go ahead and pin that side. The side of the case wasn't exactly square. This one was, so I need to push this side out just a little bit to get it to line up flush, and that'll square everything up. There we go. Alright, there's that. And the center one, it just goes in, it's centered up here. It should be about like a 1/2 inch. Let's see if I put the ones from the other side. Will that fit in there? So that's about right. Pretty close to. I just eyeball it there. First I'll put some glue on it. And we'll put that in here. And we'll eyeball it up to the center and get it flush on one end. Pin in it. And this side. All right, well, I'm going to let the glue dry on this piece, and I'll flip it over and do the other side, same thing. I'll let the glue dry, then we'll drill some holes and put some dowels in them. I'm using an 1/8 inch brad point bit to drill these holes for these dowels. I got a piece of tape on the bit, set it in 1 inch from the tip so I can drill a 1 inch deep hole. I just drill 2 in each end and then 1 in the bottom middle of this bottom slat. I cut some pieces of the 1/8 inch dowel a little longer than 1 inch, and just using a toothpick to put some glue in the hole, and then once I do that, I'll just go ahead and just push the dowels into them and then trim them off with a flush trim saw. I picked up some stick-on letters at the craft store, and here I'm just using a little black paint to highlight the words I have on the side of my growler, so when I peel the letter off, the words will show up. These letters turned out to be pretty sticky, so I tried using an X-Acto knife, but that didn't work real well, so I just found that using my fingernail and peeling the things off worked best, and I kept at it, and I eventually got everything removed. Well, it's time to put the divider in, so I'm just putting a little glue on the bottom of the piece I'm using for a divider, and we'll stick it in and square it up. I got a couple of marks on the top slats there for the center, so just use some micro pins. I did actually put a couple of screws in through the bottom of the slats into the bottom of the divider. I didn't show that, but I figure a little added insurance wouldn't hurt anything. The handle is just a piece of 1-inch poplar dowel. I didn't glue it into the sides of the case. I just drilled down through the top and down in through all the way through the dowel into the bottom, and then just pinned it with a piece of 1/8-inch dowel. So that keeps it from spinning and holds it in place, and it worked out really well. A few coats of spray lacquer and this project is finished. Well, that's how I made this project. It was a lot of fun. It was fairly straightforward, fairly simple project, so I'd encourage you to get out in your shop, make one for yourself. You can make it out of any kind of wood, really. It really doesn't have to be pallet wood, although it's a good pallet wood project. But you can make it out of oak would be good. Pine would be acceptable. So I'm not quite sure I would make one out of cherry or mahogany. But hey, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want, that's what you have. It would certainly look really nice. So there are a lot of different ideas out on the internet. So if you Google growler totes or growler carrier, you'll find a lot of different kinds and different types. So I looked at a couple of them, and this is the one that I came up with. So thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.